We're starting our unit on energy. This is a super quick unit. You already have a test on this next week. It's super short. We're only going to spend a few days, and then we will end the semester with ecology and human impact. So today we will start energy. Tomorrow you have a day off, and then we will pick up with energy on Thursday and Friday. You will finish with virtual next week, and then you will have a test. So the first thing we're going to talk about are natural resources. So a lot of this stuff you may have heard of before. So a natural resource is a material or a substance such as a mineral, forest, water, and fertile land that can occur in nature, and it can be used for economic gain. So there are two types in specific that we are going to talk about: renewable and non-renewable. And that's what you're going to see between today and tomorrow. So what is a renewable resource? These are resources that can be replaced at a rate close to its rate of use or in some kind of unlimited supply. Okay? So examples of this would be oxygen, nitrogen from in the air, and we'll get more into nitrogen when we get into ecology and the nitrogen cycle. Trees, things like lumber, water, and solar energy, which comes from where? The sun. Non-renewable resources are resources of a fixed amount or a resource that is used up faster than it can actually be replaced. So some examples of these are different metals, non-metals, and specific energy sources like coal, oil, and petroleum. So talking North Carolina specifically, there are some forestry resources in North Carolina. So things like Christmas trees and other varieties of trees that are used for things like timber. So a lot of times people might purchase a big chunk of land and then they log it out. Okay, so they cut it down and log it out. Some agriculture resources that we find in North Carolina include things like field crops, okay? So tobacco, cotton, and soybeans. And then when we get into livestock, this is hard to see, sorry, because of the picture, I'll shrink it. But you've got things like turkeys underneath. Next, we're gonna get into some land uses. So the first of these is industrialization. So the large-scale introduction of manufacturing, advanced technical enterprises, and other productive economic activity into an area, society, or country. So this is something that you would actually talk in definitely more detail in history. So some consequences. When we talk consequences, there can be positive consequences or there can be negative consequences. So positive, unskilled job growth and economic opportunity. Negative consequences of these would be lower paying jobs, poor working conditions, things like urbanization, and you will see some of these terms in your vocab for this unit, and lack of environmental awareness. So what is urbanization? The process by which towns and cities are formed, and they become larger as more and more people begin living and working in these central areas. So consequences of this. So we have positive and negative. So consequences, or positive, lower birth rates and lower rural populations. so therefore we have better farming practices. Negative, there are things like heat islands, and we talked about these 2 units ago, okay? Destruction of natural habitat and waste, high energy consumption with temperatures, and then higher percentage of health problems. So heat island, bringing this back. This is a city that has increased temperatures due to having asphalt, buildings, and other dark structures that absorb and hold heat longer than natural environments. So you can see this in the image to the right, okay? So there's little vegetation or evaporation, and this causes cities to remain warmer than the surrounding countrysides, okay? Because if we're in the country, what do you see a lot more of? City versus the country. What do you see a lot more in the country? Trees. Perfect. So some consequences both for this one, negative consequences, so increased temperatures and an increased energy demand, because we're talking about being in the city. There can also be a strain on wildlife, because in order to make this happen, we take that away. Next, we're going to talk about mitigation. We've seen this word a lot throughout the semester in some specific assignments. So in order to combat heat island efforts through mitigation, there have been some things that have been made. So greening of the city, change in construction materials, and reduction of heat sources. Fancy. Next is deforestation. This is definitely a term we have seen, I'm sure. We're going to see this again in our last unit when we talk about ecology and human impact. So natural forests are cleared through logging and or burning. So the Amazon is the largest rainforest in the world. And since 1970, 20% of the rainforests have been cut down. And this has been an ongoing thing. So deforestation, we can use materials from it, but at the same time, we are cutting down trees, and those trees might be homes to animals, okay? So positive and negative consequences here. So logging, cattle raising, agriculture, and food. Okay, so those are some good things that we get out of this. But some bad things, some negative sides to this, there's a decrease of biodiversity because, like I said, when we're cutting down those trees, okay, we're taking away the homes of certain animals. Okay, there can also be a loss of plant life because we're cutting down trees. And then because we're taking away the trees, there is now increased global warming because what are we putting into the air that the trees are not taking in now? What do we put into the air? What do we breathe out? Carbon dioxide. So normally the plant life is what would take that in. So if we cut that down, they're not there to be able to take that in. That's the end. Does anybody have questions?